My daughter once told me I was too poor to be a good mom. She changed her tune after I got rich. I'd been awake since 5 a.m. making Lily's favorite French toast when she stormed into the kitchen, slamming her phone on the counter I just cleaned. "You're literally the worst mom in Beverly Hills High," she said it loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Do you know what Mia just posted? Her mom gave her $2,000 for a random Tuesday shopping trip on top of her $400 a week allowance. I kept flipping the French toast, the same breakfast I'd made every Tuesday for 3 years, because she once said it reminded her of better times. Morning to you too, sweetie. Here's the thing about being a single mom who had her kid at 19. You're always trying to make up for something. The dad who left. The parents who said you ruined your life. The experiences you couldn't give your child. I became a teacher for the hours. Turned down 3 promotions to stay in the classroom. Drove a 15-year-old Toyota so she could have tutoring, dance lessons, and the right clothes. Are you even listening? Lily snatched the spatula from my hand. Chloe's mom is taking her to Paris for spring break. Mia's going to Cabo. And me? I'll be stuck here because my mom's a teacher who can't even afford cable. She shoved her phone in my face. Look at this group chat. They're planning spa days, Botox, shopping trips. And I have to keep saying, can't make it, my mom had me too young and ruined both our lives. The irony stung. I'd been accepted to Northwestern Pre-Med when I found out I was pregnant. My parents kicked me out. Lily's father disappeared. But looking at my beautiful, ungrateful daughter, I knew I'd make the same choice every single day. Her, over everything. I'm doing my best, I said. Your best is pathetic, she screamed. Do you know what Mia said? That her mom offered to take me to Cabo as the charity case. The poor kid. That's what I am because of you. You chose this. You chose to be poor. Those moms love their daughters enough to work hard and make something of themselves. You just gave up. Something inside me shifted. Maybe it was exhaustion from 16 years of sacrifice. Maybe it was the way she said chose to be poor, like I hadn't chosen her every single day. Fine, I said quietly, setting down the French toast. You want what Mia has? You'll get exactly what Mia has. She ran upstairs, already FaceTiming her friends about her upcoming glow up and how she'd finally fixed her cheap mom. Monday morning, I left before her alarm went off and left $400 on the counter. By 7 a.m., my phone buzzed. OMG, Mom. I knew you'd come through. That afternoon, another text. At the mall with Mia. Using Uber. Don't wait up. The first real crisis came 2 weeks later. I was teaching an evening class when the texts came flooding in. Mom, please come home. Jake broke up with me 2 months ago. I would have dropped everything. But Mia's mom didn't leave her law firm when Mia's boyfriend cheated. She gave her money for shopping therapy. So I transferred $200. Treat yourself. That's what Mia's mom did, typing bubbles. Then, when are you coming home? I'm working to give you what you wanted. Week 3 brought parent-teacher conferences. I'd circled that date in red every year since kindergarten. This time, I booked tutoring clients instead. Later, Lily's counselor called. Ms. Williams, we really needed you here today. Lily's college essays are concerning. She's never missed deadlines before. That night, I found her essay draft on the table. The prompt, describe a challenge you've overcome. She wrote about feeling like no one was there when she needed it most. I left $400 on top of it and went to bed. But the real breaking point was her 16th birthday. She texted Friday afternoon. Can you at least come to my birthday dinner tomorrow? 7 p.m. at nou.no. I'm working. There's $250 in my dresser for your party. Mia's mom missed her sweet 16 dinner too. She left me on scene. That night, I came home at 10 p.m. to find her sitting on the kitchen floor in her party dress. Mascara everywhere. No one came, she whispered. The waiter sang to an empty table. Then, through broken sobs, she said the words I'd been waiting to hear all along. I knelt down beside her, knees aching, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Her face streaked with mascara. She whispered, almost too quiet to hear, I just wanted you. The words hit somewhere deep, like someone had reached inside and squeezed. All the anger, all the hurt from being called pathetic, from hearing that I'd ruined her life, it was still there. but underneath it was something else. Relief, maybe. Recognition, because I'd been waiting to hear exactly that. Even if I didn't know it until this moment, I didn't say anything right away. Every instinct told me to apologize, to promise I'd fix it, to go back to early mornings and endless giving. But that's what got us here, me giving until there was nothing left, and her taking without ever seeing the cost. So instead, I stayed quiet for a long moment, just listening to her cry. Then I said 4 words, "I'm here right now." We sat together on the cold tile floor in silence while she sobbed harder, her shoulders shaking. I rested my hand on her back, but didn't try to fix it with words. After about 20 minutes, she wiped her face with her hands and asked if we could talk tomorrow, when she was calmer. I agreed. It made more sense than trying to fix everything tonight when we were both exhausted and emotional. I told her, no Uber money tonight, but I'll drive you to school in the morning. She nodded without arguing, which was new. Then she stood up slowly, her party dress wrinkled and stained with tears, and went upstairs. I heard her door close softly, not slam. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the past month in my head like a movie I couldn't turn off. I saw myself leaving money on the counter instead of making breakfast. Transferring $200 instead of going home when she was heartbroken. Skipping the parent-teacher conferences I'd never missed, leaving $400 on her college essay instead of reading it, missing her birthday dinner. Every single thing I'd done to prove a point, to teach her what it felt like to have money but no mom. And it worked. She learned. But somewhere along the way, I forgot I was supposed to be her mother, not her punishment. I'd been so focused on making her understand what she'd thrown away that I actually threw it away myself. The experiment proved my point. But it hurt my daughter in the process, and lying there in the dark, I finally saw that clearly. The next morning was quiet and tense as I drove Lily to school. Neither of us knew how to start the conversation we needed to have. She stared out the window at the passing houses. I kept my eyes on the road. The silence felt heavy, not angry, just uncertain. Before she got out at the drop-off line, I said, "We need to make a real plan after school. No more throwing money around or using it as punishment." She nodded and closed the car door without her usual slam. At work, during my planning period, Danielle Franks pulled me aside. She closed her classroom door and asked if we could talk. She said she'd noticed I'd been distracted lately, missing grading deadlines, which wasn't like me. Her tone was gentle, not critical. "Is everything okay at home?" she asked. The question made me realize how much the situation with Lily had seeped into my job. I'd been so focused on tutoring, money, and proving my point that I'd let my teaching slip. I admitted I'd been taking on too many clients and trying to manage family issues at the same time. Danielle listened quietly, then said, "Burnout helps no one." She suggested I cut back on the extra work until things at home were stable again. The thought scared me financially. That tutoring money had been covering Lily's new expenses, but I knew she was right. I couldn't keep working nights and weekends and still be the parent my daughter needed. Something had to give. That afternoon, Lily and I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open to my bank account. I'd never shown her the real numbers before, never let her see how much I actually made or where it all went. She watched as I pulled up my last paycheck, then the list of expenses, rent, utilities, car insurance, groceries, her old dance classes. Her eyes widened as I scrolled through. Then I showed her the tutoring deposits, barely enough to cover her new $400 allowance, the Uber rides, and the shopping trips. Finally, the overdraft fees, 6 of them, $35 each, from money I didn't actually have. Lily stared at the screen. "I didn't know it was this bad," she said softly. I bit back what I wanted to say, that she'd never asked, never wondered where it came from. Instead, I explained that I needed to stop taking so many tutoring jobs, which meant the $400 a week allowance experiment had to end, not as punishment, but because I couldn't afford it anymore, and because it wasn't helping either of us. She surprised me then by asking, "So what happens next?" Not yelling, not demanding. I told her honestly, "I don't have all the answers yet. Let's both think about what we actually need instead of what we've been doing, and talk again tomorrow." She nodded and closed the laptop carefully, like she was afraid it might break. Around 8 that evening, someone knocked on our front door. It was Louis Stanley from next door, holding a casserole dish and looking a little awkward. He cleared his throat and said he'd noticed Lily home alone a lot lately, especially after dark, and wanted to check if everything was okay. My face flushed with embarrassment. I hadn't realized anyone noticed. I thanked him for the casserole and admitted I'd been working extra evenings to cover expenses. Louis nodded, didn't pry, just said, "If you ever need someone nearby to keep an eye out for Lily on those nights, I'd be glad to help." The relief that washed over me was instant. I asked Louis if he really meant it, and he said absolutely, gave me his number, and told me to text whenever I worked late so he could keep an eye out. I went back inside feeling grateful, but ashamed that a neighbor had noticed before I did how often Lily was alone. The next morning, I found an email from Lily's school counselor, Antoinette Morel. The subject line, urgent, Lily's college applications, made my stomach drop. She wrote that Lily had missed another essay deadline and was at risk of losing her top choice schools. Her tone was kind but firm. Lily didn't need money. She needed real support. I emailed back immediately and asked to meet without Lily to explain what had been going on. She scheduled me for Thursday at 3:30. When I sat in her small office surrounded by college posters, I told her everything. The French toast morning, Lily's words, my experiment, all of it. Antoinette listened quietly, then said she understood my intention, but the approach had backfired. What I thought was teaching had turned into disconnection. She recommended a family therapist, Dr. Emmeline Lane, who specialized in parent-teen communication. That night, I mentioned therapy to Lily while we cleaned the kitchen. She looked at me like I'd suggested something absurd. "Therapy's for people with real problems," she said. I didn't argue, just told her I was going anyway because I needed help figuring out how to be a better mom. That seemed to surprise her. 2 days later, I called Dr. Lane's office and booked an appointment for myself. Walking in felt a little like admitting defeat. 16 years of trying my best hadn't been enough. But Emmeline greeted me warmly, listened without judgment, and reframed everything in a way that cut deep. I'd tried to teach Lily that money wasn't love, but I'd ended up taking away both. Then she handed me tools, ways to set boundaries without punishment, to stay present without losing myself, to say no with love. I filled pages with notes, realizing for the first time that maybe being a better mom wasn't about doing more, it was about doing it differently. Armed with Emmeline's advice, I decided to try a new approach that weekend. On Saturday, while driving to the grocery store with the windows down, I told Lily that love didn't mean giving her everything or nothing, it meant showing up. She listened quietly as I explained a new curfew, 10 p.m. on weeknights with check-ins, not as punishment but structure. After a pause, she asked if the money experiment was over. I said yes, but we weren't going back to how things used to be. We'd find something that worked for both of us. That night, she tested the curfew. She went to a movie with classmates, not her usual friends. At 10 p.m., she texted that it ran long and she'd be home by 10:30. She walked in at 10:28, looking nervous. I just thanked her for texting and reminded her to plan better next time. She nodded. It was a small step, but it felt big. The next week, I got another urgent email from her school, 5 days left before her top choice college deadline. I forwarded it to her without comment, then texted, "I'll help if you want help, but I won't do it for you." 3 hours later, she replied, "Okay." By Wednesday, I'd convinced her to try one therapy session with me on Friday. She agreed, reluctantly, just once. But Thursday night, she got invited to a big party. She asked if we could reschedule therapy because everyone's going. Every part of me wanted to either cave or argue, but I remembered Emmeline's words. I told Lily it was her choice. She could go to the party or come to therapy, but the next available appointment was 2 weeks away. I promised I wouldn't guilt her either way. She thought for a long time, then said she was going to the party, defensive, ready for a fight that didn't come. I just said okay and cleared the table. She left quietly at 8 o'clock. Around 9:30, she texted she'd be home soon. When she walked in at 9:45, Her makeup was smudged, her shoulders slumped. I asked how it was. She dropped her purse on the counter and said softly, it was fine. I just couldn't stay there anymore. Lily told me that Mia and Chloe spent the whole party talking about spring break and showing off photos from the Hamptons. Watching them, she realized she didn't even like being around them anymore. They made her feel small, like she was failing some test she never agreed to take. But she admitted she didn't know how to step away. They'd been her whole social circle for 2 years. I wanted to say I told you so, but stayed quiet, poured her some tea, and sat beside her. She held the mug with both hands, staring into it like it might have answers. Then she said she felt stupid for not seeing it sooner, for believing they cared when she was just their charity case. I listened without interrupting, and something shifted between us. It was the first real conversation we'd had in months. No money, no blame, just us. The next morning, I was anxious. Danielle was observing my class because of her concerns about my performance. I arrived early, checked everything twice, and tried to teach normally. After class, she said my teaching was fine, but I looked exhausted. She suggested dropping 2 tutoring clients to make time for family. Losing $800 a month scared me, but I thought of Lily opening up the night before and knew she was right. I agreed and sent the emails that afternoon. That evening, I told Lily I'd cut back tutoring to spend more time with her. She looked surprised and asked if it meant less money. I said yes, but we'd manage. Something softened in her expression. Then she asked if we could try therapy just once. I agreed immediately and booked the session with Emmeline. When the day came, I was more nervous than Lily. We sat in silence in the waiting room, scrolling our phones. The first 20 minutes were awkward, full of defensive answers. Then Emmeline asked Lily about the charity case comment, and the wall finally cracked. Lily's voice shook as she described how humiliating it was to be the poor friend, to have Mia's mom offer to take her to Cabo like a project. I just listened, really listened, without explaining or defending. For the first time, she said she'd felt ashamed and took it out on me instead of the real problem. Emmeline nodded and asked what we wanted from therapy. We answered honestly. Before we left, she gave us homework, review our budget together, and create one weekly ritual that cost nothing but time. Lily looked doubtful, but said she'd try. It gave me a small spark of hope that maybe we could really fix things. That weekend, we sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open to my bank account and all my bills spread out. I walked her through everything: rent, groceries, insurance, student loans, even the overdraft fees from trying to cover her weekly allowance. She stared at the numbers, realizing for the first time that money wasn't endless. Then I told her something I'd never shared before, how I'd been accepted to Northwestern for pre-med with a full scholarship, how I lost it when I got pregnant, how my parents kicked me out, and how I chose teaching because it let me be home with her. I made sure she knew it wasn't about guilt. I'd never regretted choosing her. She started crying and took my hand. For the first time in years, she looked at me like a person, not just a disappointment. She asked why I'd never told her, and I said I didn't want her to think she ruined my life. I wanted her to know I chose her every time. She said she wished she'd known. It would have helped her understand my choices. The next morning, I heard her downstairs early. When I came into the kitchen, she was at her laptop, college essay open. She said she was starting over, that writing about no one being there was wrong, because I always had been. I hid my emotion behind a sip of coffee and told her I'd be in the living room if she needed me. She worked for hours, and though she didn't show me what she'd written, I could tell it mattered. That night over dinner, I suggested a do-over birthday at home, just a few friends and a homemade cake. She said it would feel like a pity party, but I told her it wasn't about money, it was about celebrating with people who cared. She said she'd think about it, and I let it go. 2 weeks later, our living room was ready, board games on the table, a crooked chocolate cake with 16 candles waiting on the counter. Lily invited 3 classmates, 2 girls and a guy, who arrived within minutes of each other, a little unsure about a house party instead of a fancy venue. I stayed mostly in the kitchen, listening as they laughed and played games. When I brought out the cake, They sang without awkwardness, and I watched from the doorway as Lily smiled, a real one, not her practice social one. After everyone left, she said it had been more fun than the restaurant, that she didn't have to pretend or worry about how she looked. While cleaning up, she surprised me by saying we should rethink her allowance. Instead of a set amount, she wanted to get a part-time job for extras while I covered her needs. I was stunned but proud, and we agreed to look for something that fit her schedule. Monday, I met with Antoinette to review Lily's college deadlines. She said Lily seemed more focused and grounded lately. I told her about therapy, the budget talk, and the party, and she offered to check in weekly to help us stay consistent. Later that month, Danielle called me in. I expected criticism, but instead she praised my progress, removed the warning from my file, and offered to mentor me for a leadership role that came with a small raise and no extra hours. I accepted immediately. That same week, Lewis mentioned a cafe hiring weekend help and offered to recommend Lily. She applied, interviewed 2 days later, and got the job. Her first weekend was rough, rude customers, aching feet, but she went back the next day on her own. The following Tuesday, I found her in the kitchen making French toast for us. She told me to sit and let her try. We ate together, talking about small, easy things, tests, shows, life. The next week, we did it again. It quietly became our thing, simple, warm, and ours. Some mornings we just made food and complained about being tired, but it still felt like we were rebuilding something broken, one breakfast at a time. AT therapy that Thursday. Emmeline asked us each to apologize for one thing. I went first, saying I was sorry for using money as punishment instead of talking through problems, for being absent when what Lily needed was presence with boundaries.